What's up, guys? So I'm going to do a little bit of a Dispriest healing guide for Conclave here. I'm going to talk a little bit about the other healers as well, but this is primarily going to be focused on Dispriest healing. A little bit about this boss. It's mostly a learning mechanics boss. There's not like too tight of checks. There is a healing check on Frost, and there's like a little bit of a damage check, but mostly once you learn this fight and people stop making like the dumb mistakes of like dying to ads or getting knocked off, you shouldn't have too much trouble re-clearing this fight. It just might take you a little bit of time to learn on Prog. So you can see here, the healer splits. It's me and a Holy Priest on Wind. We have this Resurrected here as well, but he's a little bit under-geared, so he's not going to be doing like too much HPS here. We have all the melee over here, or most of the melee rather. Some of the cleave melee are going to be over on the ad side. The most important thing to look at pre-pull here is just that I've set up the groups over here to be optimal for priest healing. You really want to be able to effectively prayer of heal on this side because you're going to be wanting to pre-shield a little bit and also effectively and quickly heal up the windshield. The windshield is like really the dangerous thing that goes on this side. There's really not too, like if you're healing on the ad side, there's really not too much damage going on unless people are messing up. And if you're on Frost, you are just mostly going to be tank healing. Although you probably shouldn't be placed on Frost. The best place for Priest, in my opinion, is this Wind platform. And especially given that, like, as long as you have some Holy Paladins in your raid, at least one, they're going to be really, really good at doing the Frost when it's just the tank over there because they can bubble up their stacks. Right, so you'll see pre-pull. I'm going to be doing a little bit of pre-shielding. You can, like, the ideal situation is I would have Aegis fully stacked up on both of these groups previous to the pull just by, spamming some prayer of healings and then drinking in between. But, I'm just a little bit lazy. This is like, we're like an hour into Prog on this fight, so I'm just being a bit lazy here. So what the Wind guy does is he will do a random damage on like a random target in range. And just, you see there, it's just chunking for like 20-30%. The best way to heal this up, like, there's really not, this is not dangerous at all. So what I would be doing here is I would just be using Atonement to basically heal between the windshields. You can see here I'm just, smiting, holy firing. The tornadoes here, you absolutely, priority one is to avoid these. If you get hit, you get knocked off, and it like makes you AFK for a really long time. And it also does like 80% of your health. They're a little bit hard to see. I would recommend basically pointing your camera straight down like I'm doing here to be able to see them better. If you get hit like before a windshield, it's basically GG, right? Especially on Prog when people have low HP because they don't have gear. So you can see here the windshield is coming out, so I'm just popping my Archangel stacks and doing a bit of prayer of healing to get some Aegis stacked up. The other thing here is you can't really pop your Rapture consistently between windshields because, again, the damage is totally random. So if you just start putting powered shields on random people hoping to get popped, like, you're going to spend a lot of mana. So I wouldn't even really bother worrying about your Rapture between windshields, but I would be always looking at that windshield cooldown to pop your Rapture with it when it pops. Also, if you see somebody pretty low, like right as the shield is about to go out, you just pop a shield on them to help them live. You see here, I'm just doing some POHing. I have a POH precast, so it hits like right as that shield goes out. And then here, I'm just going to be using some binding heals and some, that wind blast is out, so I just pop like one renew. You have a lot of time to heal people up between here, so don't worry too much. Just really hard focus on avoiding tornadoes, avoiding the wind blast. As long as there's not a shield in like 3 seconds, or people aren't like at 10% HP, you don't need to heal people up quickly. So again, just doing a little bit of healing here. And I'm going to be just positioning a little bit towards the jumping point to go over to Frost. Again, just atonementing, trying to get my Archangel stacks up there so that when I go to Frost, I can pop those POHing. So that for this ultimate, he basically does the Malagos thing where he like lifts whoever's on the platform up into the air. And they can't like do cast, but they can do instant cast. So you can leave a Resto Druid there to solo it, which is super easy and safe. But if you need the Resto Druid healing, you can also just leave like a Rogue there with a recoup and like Cloak and Faint and all that stuff. I'm pretty sure a lot of immunes work for it too, so I think you can leave like Mage with block. As long as there's just somebody in range of him, he won't wipe the raid. So if you're a Resto Druid, you can try to convince your raid leader to leave somebody else there if you really want to blast. Because healing Frost is pretty fun. So again, we're jumping over to Frost here, just doing a couple instants in the air. That's not like super necessary, but you can like set up your palm and some renews or some shields. So as I'm running in, I'm just shielding some low targets, and then as we get stacked up here, I will be popping PI and Zerk. I just always PI myself because I'm a monster, and I just like I like healing for a lot. If your raid really forces you not to PI yourself, it's a huge bummer. It's really, really nice to stack, especially with like Zerk and Lust. The mana reduction is actually really, really nice if you're full hard spamming POH like inside of those haste cooldowns. It's also really nice to, you can use your PI and then a couple seconds into PI you use your Zerk, and then with the last global you can him and get like a really juicy him. But here I'm kind of just sending it on cooldown on this Frost. I missed my Rapture a couple seconds there, which is kind of bad, but here you can just see with the big raid damage, I'm just pretty much hard spamming POH and sending out palms. I have a weak aura that tells me when palm has no charges left. Your palm can get stuck a decent amount of the time because you're putting a lot of shields up. It can take like longer than the cooldown of palm to fully bounce. So, you don't have to send palm like fully on CD every time. You should wait until all the charges are expended. Although, like, if you have to move, it's a decent instant to cast. So you can see here I'm going back to Wind. This is actually pretty close. Somebody called that Wind Blast was safe, so I took it. You can see, like, as I'm running back, usually what I would do is that if you turn your camera up, you can actually just look and see where the boss's Wind Blast is on Wind. So you can see there it's like spinning around. You can just go look and see. I would do that every time you have to jump back just to be safe, but there somebody called it was safe, so I just sent it. And then what we're doing here is you can see Storm Shield is like 2 seconds away, so I'm just going to be POHing to get a little bit of shield stacked up here. This is a bit sketchy because, again, people are running in. I usually send my barrier for this shield instead of for the damage on Frost, just because we were like overhealing a bit, and we had like really it felt super safe on Frost, so I just decided to send it for this windshield, although you can move that barrier around for whatever part of the fight is harder for you. I sent a little bit of mana him here. The thing for mana pots, for the peelers on Wind, there's really not a good time to conk pot, because if you sit a conk pot on Wind, the tornadoes can just troll you and like turn around and go towards you. So unless you're like really confident you're not going to get hit by a tornado, I wouldn't sit a full conk pot on Wind, despite the fact that there's like really not any damage going out between the shields. So you're probably going to just mythical pot and again, like when you're on Frost, you're not going to be wanting to sit a pot when there's big raid damage coming out. If you're healing ad side or you're healing the tank, you're going to probably find a spot to conk pot. Like, you're healing the tank, you get high stacks, you switch back, maybe you sit a conk pot, drop your stacks, and then go back to Frost. And on the ad side, like, when the ads aren't out, you can probably sit a conk pot super safely, especially if you have Blood DK. Like, Blood DKs, they can really sustain themselves. Like, they pop a cooldown or whatever, you just sit a conk pot. But again, if you're healing Wind side, you probably are just going to instant mana pot, or you can even just int pot for throughput on the big Frost raid damage. And again, the same thing's true for your mana him, right? Like, I mana him there, but I just sat a couple ticks because a tornado was getting too close to me. But you shouldn't really have too many mana problems on this fight, because again, you can regen pretty safely and just kind of atonement heal and spin your wheels on Wind. So here, right after that second shield, you can see there's really not anything happening. We're probably not going to get a second shield for the next ultimate, so I actually go back to Frost, and I just leave the Holy Priest and the Resto Druid on Wind to heal that up, and I just go to contribute a little bit to the tank healing. We didn't have our second Holy Paladin on this week, so it was an Arsham over here healing the tank, and it's just a little bit safer to have me go over there. You'll see I'm running in. I'm just going to pop a shield for Rapture, and then I'm going to do a Penance to stack up Grace. And then mostly, like I had an inner focus here, so I just spent it on a flash heal. Probably could have greater healed there, would have been better, but sending Penance, getting my Rapture procs. And as people are running in, I'm getting a couple of Archangel stacks. And then again, it's PI and back to spamming Prayer healing on the raid damage. that's pretty much the fight. It's not really complicated for healers. The only real thing you're gonna have to learn is like not to get hit by mechanics, and to like when to swap. Especially if you're going to be contributing to the tank healing on Frost, like when to swap. Also, if you're a Holy Paladin, like you can bubble the stacks off. Just feel out how many stacks you can go to. You can probably go really high as a Holy Paladin. But if you want to be safe, you know, you can bubble them off pretty early. You have a huge amount of self-healing as Holy Paladin, just with like Protector of the Innocent, and you know, your beacon on the tank, you can heal into yourself, all that. So you're super safe over there. Holy Paladins are like by far the best at healing Frost. So we come back here, there's a Storm Shield. This is a little bit of a dangerous one. You can see, I think bottom grind, the warrior actually dies here. I could have power word shielded him there, it was a mistake. Probably saved his life. The other thing to think about on wind side, and another reason why priests are like so insane at healing this side, is that life grip is actually really, really good on this fight. There weren't any examples of it on this pull, but in a lot of the prog pulls where people were learning the tornadoes and the wind slice or whatever it is, the little blast he does that knocks you off. Me and Lightwater both had some like heroic life grips where we saved some DPS players. Basically, while the shield is not going out, the only time anyone is going to get super chunked is if they get hit by a tornado or the wind blast. So if you see any player all of a sudden take like 80% of their health, just instantly life grip them, because if somebody gets knocked by a tornado or the wind blast, you can grip them back on and save them from having to be like AFK for like 8 seconds while they get you know, like spun back up onto the platform. So that's like super strong if you can do it. So that's something to keep in mind as a priest. So again, here we get that shield, and now we're just sort of passively healing people up. I'm pretty sure, yeah, I send my fiend here. And I get a Rapture proc there, which is nice. I should have sent my gloves with the Fiend as well. That was a mistake. I delayed them a little bit. You can see I'm just using Atonement. Using my Archaeology trinket on CD there, which is like really, really nice if you have it. If you don't have it, just, you know, the Alchemist Stone is really, really good. They're decently close. Big of a deal if you didn't get it from digging. So here we're killing. I'm transitioning back, and here we're just gonna like basically all out. We're just gonna blast all of our mana. So you can see I'm running in using some instants here. I stop there to prayer. Pop a shield on the tank. I'm popping all my, like using my last Zerk here, using my Archangel stacks, and just blasting prayer feeling. And that's the boss. So that's Conclave. Again, like on your first pulls, this boss is going to feel kind of overwhelming. There's a lot of things going on. There's like 3 different platforms. There's transitioning back and forth. But once you learn this fight, it's not too hard. So let's look at just parsing. So playing the way I played, you know, just decent here. The biggest difference on like parsing this fight as disc is just how much healing you can get on that Frost. If you drop healers on the wind platform, you might even be able, like, if people get a little bit of gear, you could probably even solo heal that wind platform decently with prayer healing, because like people get a little bit more HP. It's gonna be less dangerous to have that wind shield, and also, you know, people get more gear, they do more damage, they kill the shield faster. But if you look at all healers, the big juicers on this fight are going to be Resto Druids and Holy Paladins. Like, most of the damage you have to heal on this fight is going to be during the big raid damage on Frost. And, you know, Holy Radiance is absolutely insane, and Resto Druid's also really, really insane at those, like, huge raid burst damage. It's just, like, ticking down. So it's mostly going to be Holy Paladin, Resto Druid fight here. But as a priest, you can see there's some priests up here. Even the Holy Priests blast on this fight. You can do decent competition. You just really gonna have to focus on doing maximum throughput with your prayer feeling on that big frost damage. So that's Conclave. Again, pretty simple, just mostly a mechanics execution, and then, you know, there's a little bit of a healing check with the ultimate on Frost. The healing for this fight is a lot less complicated than just, you know, learning the mechanics. So let's talk a little bit about gearing for this fight. My strategy for gearing in Ada is, my strategy for gearing is, you know, obviously you really want to be NG for discipline, and I actually am gearing full crit. So I'm doing Spirit, Prio 1, crit, Prio 2. The reason for this is that Prayer of Healing, I actually thought this, like, I tested this on beta, and I honestly thought it was a bug, but Prayer of Healing will actually double apply Divine Aegis when it crits. So your talents guarantee you Divine Aegis on prayer feeling all the time, but like that application that's guaranteed is like separate from the crit application for some reason. So if you crit a prayer feeling, you get actually like quad Aegis. It's really, really insane. So I'm gearing full crit pretty much on everything. And like it's working out really well, especially for like low gear prog. You really don't want to be gearing haste. Everyone's telling you to gear haste. This is really not, in my opinion, a great idea because haste does not increase your healing per cast as discipline at all. The only spell that's increased healing per cast as discipline with haste is Divine Hymn and Renew, and you're really not going to be casting Renew that much, and you only hymn once a fight most of the time because it's a pretty long cooldown, and it's not as juiced as Holy that gets like their huge scaling on it. All haste does is make your mana worse. Although you're primarily healing through Atonement, like on certain, like on Halfis or like Magma or something where you get a big damage up, you might want to gear a bit more haste just to do more like DPS and healing through that. Personally, I found this to be working out really, really well. Just full crit gearing, crit spirit, and I think this works out just fine. Although you could gear a little bit more haste just because you have so much time to regen your mana when you're just like kind of AFKing on Wind platform, not healing too much. And like if you're geared a bit more towards haste, you can blast more of your mana out at once on Frost and those big damage pushes. But I honestly feel like this gearing is really, really strong for this period in the tier where you don't have that intellect, you don't have like as much spirit, your mana is going to be constrained and your fights are going to be pretty long. I think this gearing strategy is BIS. Also, I just gem full intellect. Intellect is such an insane stat for discipline. There's just no reason to ever not gem intellect unless the bonus is 20 intellect. I just gem full intellect always. So that's gearing. For trinkets, you should just always be running passive intellect bonus trinkets. I pretty much would never take off a trinket that has passive intellect for a trinket that doesn't have passive intellect. Personally, just the mana pool and like how it interacts with all your spells and Rapture and Hymn and Fiend and everything, that passive intellect is just absolutely huge. If you don't have the Archaeology trinket, you can use the Alchemist trinket. If you don't have Alchemy, you can use passive intellect trinket that also procs like spirit. I believe it's from Stonecore Heroic. I'm gonna be making guides for like most of the bosses as we prog. We're progging like Nefarian, Cho'Gall, and Sinestra and Council this week. So everything else we've killed. So I'll make videos about those. I'll try to talk about the other healers as well, but it's mostly gonna be focused on disc. Thanks for watching.